In this video, we'll familiarize ourselves with the control panel on the Butterfly single head. If you look here at the main screen, it tells us what's going on with the machine. In the middle here is where designs will be shown. Along the top shows important status information. Here through here, these three green buttons tell us what state the machine is in. Over here on the edge of it is the current speed of the machine, both what you are setting the machine to sew at, plus the high and low limits as defined by the parameters. Below that, here, show the current color order of the embroidery. So on the left, here it says we'll be doing color 1, then color 2, 3, 4, 5 in order. And next to it here says what needle the machine is on. And below are some details about the current design. Its name is Snail. It has 15 colors in it. It's 19,000 stitches. At the very bottom are a time and an indicator if the USB stick is inserted or not. In the middle here underneath will be the current stitch count while you're sewing. And so we're not sewing yet, so it is at 0. Okay, let's sew the most basic functions. First off, I've talked about these three green squares here. Generally, when you're sewing, you want all three of these to be green. The one at the left designates whether your machine is in editing mode or in a sewing mode. When it's in an editing mode, and it will be red when it's in an editing mode, let's go to it. It'll be blinking red. In this mode, you are allowed to select a new design, change designs, change the colors in a design, rotate it, all sorts of manipulations with the design before you sew it. And when you're done, when you're satisfied that the design is ready to sew, then you will go into drive mode. Push this button. At which case it will show a preview of the design, and you'll notice this square here is now green, meaning it's ready to sew, and the start and stop buttons will cause the machine to move. So in general, this means we're ready, be careful, and you can't really change anything in this mode. So let's go back. Now the button I'm pushing is right next to the enter key at the bottom right of it. You can't see it in this shot. It is a single needle going up and down. So when you press it, it will give you a confirmation. Do you want to change to drive mode? And we say yes and enter. We have the preview, and I'll press this button again, which is again it's a single needle going up and down. Go back to editing mode, and yes. And this is the most basic function in the machine. This is the most basic command. That's the switch between the two modes of the machine. It's rather important because you can, when you start sewing, you really cannot change designs. You really shouldn't change designs in the middle of a sew. So when you leave drive mode and go back into editing mode, if you're in the middle of a sew, all that information is lost. And then you have to start over from the beginning again, unless you know what you're doing, and you can recover back to where you were using different commands. Alright, I showed you this one here, which is either drive mode or edit mode. This one in the middle here is the automatic color change. Most embroiderers are going to use the machine in fully automatic, which is green. To change this state is a picture of two needles and it's the only one on the thing. So when you press it, you'll notice that the color is now different. Now press it again and again. So it went from green to yellow to red. Green is fully automatic. This means your machine will sew up to a color change. It will automatically change the needle for you, and then it will restart itself automatically. So it will go from the beginning to the very end of the design without your input. And 99% you are going to be using it in fully automatic. Now let's press that button again of the 2 needles. It will be yellow. This will be a semi-automatic mode. This will basically pause the machine after every color change, but it will still automatically change colors. So it will sew the first color when you start the machine, and when you reach the end of that, it will cut the thread and it will move to the next color, but it will pause there waiting on action from you, at which case you either press the start button again to proceed with the next color, or you do whatever task you needed to do in the pause, maybe to double check it, or to put something on top of it, whatever you want. Now let's press it again. Now the machine is in full manual mode for color changing. This means at every color change it will stop and it won't even change color. It will cut the thread, but it won't. It's waiting for you to manually change the color by pressing button 1 through 15 for the 15 needles on this. And generally you will want to do this if you're maybe experimenting with the design, or if it really doesn't matter what the colors are, just you need random colors. For instance, if you're doing some child's name, maybe you want a whole bunch of random colors on it. Let's press the button again. But most people will be using it in fully automatic. So again, when you want everything to sew, you will want everything to be green. This last one here tells the machine whether you're going to actually sew, or pretend to sew. So when it's green, when this one on the right is green, it will actually sew. Now I will change the state of it by pressing a button that has 3 needles. Oh, hold on. Sorry, 1 needle and thread underneath it. So this is a similar button to the edit mode and drive mode, but it is a single needle with thread underneath it. It's the button you push. And we will push this button, and it goes from green to yellow to red. When it's in yellow, the machine pretends to sew, but he only moves the pantograph. He only moves the design, but the needle won't really go up and down. So you would do this to advance forward or back in the design and use the laser trace, I guess, to see where it's going to sew at. You might use this, for instance, if you stop to sew and you're trying to recover where you are, you would just go to the very beginning and run it, and it'll pretend to sew, and you'll let it go for 30 seconds or a minute or 2 minutes. And when you get to the point where you want it to start sewing again, then you would press stop to pause it there. So that's called a float mode, and generally it's used to go forward and backwards to recover sewing after a stop. Now let's go to push that some more, and now it's red. Red will cause it to not even move the pantograph, but to quickly go forward or backwards in the design, like hundreds of stitches per second. This way to quickly just roll through the entire design. For instance, if I were to just roll through this test pattern and press start, you notice it is just going to go through the whole design, but the machine's not even moving. It's a way to jump forward and back visually. And let's hit stop. And when I hit stop, it actually moved to the location there where it was going to sew next. So that's one way to jump ahead in the pattern. Let's see, but generally when you are doing sewing for real, everyone will be using all green here. And now that we've started sewing, if I use this button again, it will bring up a menu to manually jump ahead and back. So we notice here we can jump ahead set amount of stitches. I press enter, I say 25 stitches, and it jumped a little small amount of stitches. Let's go back. Here we go. The options here are to go forward, go backwards, to jump to the next color, or jump to the previous color. You would want to jump to the previous color in case when you sewed a new color, somehow the thread didn't catch, so you have to do the entire color from the very beginning. You would go back to the previous color. Stops not really used too much. Most stops are converted to colors. And plus an option to go back to the beginning of the design in case you're in the middle of it. So let's cancel that. Most people will be using, again, all green here. Drive mode, automatic color change mode, actual sewing. Now let me cancel this. Now just go back into editing mode and that will completely clear it. Another thing people will do on every time is to set the colors of the design. So when you're embroidering, usually you have more than one color. Once you buy a machine that has multiple colors, people generally want to use it. So in the design, it will be sew color 1 for so many stitches, and then sew color 2, and then sew color 3, and then 4 in order. You can set the order by pressing the button with 3 needles on it, going left and right, down here. So here we have options to set the colors on the machine. Generally we will use, if we haven't set colors before on a particular pattern, we would use the first one. So I'll press enter here. And then you would press numbers. And you see it keeps advancing. Let me go backwards. Let me press 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you'll notice if we set colors, we start at the far left and we set what the first color is going to be. In this case, I pick 1 for red and 2 for orange, 3 for white, and 4 for blue. It will let you keep on setting colors to infinity, but your design only has a limited amount of colors in it. So if your design only has 15 colors, you shouldn't go past 15 of them. So we'll press some things and just hit enter, and the color should be set. So let's do that again. And also, if you use this first option, the colors that you don't set will just repeat the order over and over again. So if you only want to set one color, and you change one color and you press enter, you might be surprised because it might change every color to that. So for instance, I press 1 twice and I press enter, our entire row of colors just became all color 1. So that's not what we want to do. If we have 4 colors, let's set every color and then press enter. And now if you just need to change one color, you notice on the color menu again, I pushed the button with the 3 needles. We can set one color here, press enter, and then we can go back and forth And you notice when we change the color, it just leaves us there. It doesn't really automatically advance. So that's another way to know you're in this mode. And this will let you just jump into one color and change it. Or you can just set the colors you know that are there and press enter. So again, that was set one color, and most people will either use set all colors if there's like 4 or 10 and just press all the colors in order. Or if you just need to make a small modification, use set one color. And replace color isn't used too much. It will, in case you have like 50 colors and you use red over and over again and suddenly you want to change every single red to a blue, then you would use replace color. But that's rare, so we're not going to cover that. And anyhow, when we made our changes, the order of colors updated here for that. And let's change it to all red. All red now. If you want to preview your design, you make changes in editing mode and then you jump back to drive mode. So hit enter here. Here is our snail's pattern, and you notice every single color is now red. And let me leave drive mode and into editing mode. Then I will pick 1, 2, which is red and pink. Hit enter. Go back to drive mode to see the preview. And you notice it just repeats red and pink forever. And cancel. And set something same here. Okay, that's colorful enough. Alright, I'm showing you how to set these boxes up here, what they stand for. I've shown you how to change colors on your design, and I've shown you how to jump back and forth so you can preview what's going on, how your thing is going to sew. Now, when you actually start sewing, the numbers here are going to start rolling. This is the speed of the sewing of your machine. There is a page up or a speed up and speed down button. You notice I dropped it down to tell the machine what speed to sew at. Generally, the faster you go, the production's better, but the noise is also more. So it's up to you to decide how much production you want versus how noisy you want it to be. And it stopped off at 800. Basically, we have to go to the speed menu because the operator here set it so that you're not allowed to go faster or slower than this. But the machine will go up to 1100 if you really want as a maximum, and the low can go really, really slow. Although generally you wouldn't do that except for a test. So let's just leave it at 750. At this point, when you have everything set, all green here, you have your pattern here, you would use the arrow keys to move around. Hold on. And you hear the pantograph moving around. There's a laser on this machine, so it would kind of point where it's going to sew. What you would do here is press the Start Functions button, which is at the bottom left, and it's a command key that says Start on it, and it's pointing at the origin. When you press that button, it will bring up some options up here that say Trace and Trace Wizard. You want to trace. Trace will cause the machine to move the hoop, move the pantograph to the exact size of what you're going to sew. You do this and the laser will point at the middle of that. So it will kind of draw out where it's going to sew. So what you do, let me cancel, is move to where you're going to sew. Usually it's the middle of the design. It really depends on the design if it sews starting from the center, but let's just assume that. So your very first stitch is going to be in the center. You would move your pantograph around, the laser would point on the fabric where it's going to sew. And then when you center where you're going to sew, we want to trace. So we press the start button, the start function button. And here we have some options to trace. We would generally choose trace immediate. And you can't see it, but the machine is moving along the borders of the design. So you can see, and the laser is basically tracing out the edges of the design. So you can see if your location is correct, and you can see if you're actually going to hit the hoop or something, which you should never do. If you hit a hoop with your needle, that usually causes damage to the machine. Let's just not do that. It's very safe all the time to, at this final step before you're ready to sew, you always trace it out. And here, the trace wizard is a kind of a helper function, because whenever you trace, you are gonna trace, and then you're like, well, I need to nudge my design over to the left. So you do a complete trace, and then you nudge it left, and then you trace again, and then you nudge it up, and then you trace again. The trace wizard here is generally a convenience, so it will let you move about with the pantograph, and it says press enter to trace, so I do that. What you can do is press enter again to pause, and nudge it from there, and then press enter to continue. So generally, to save a little time, you can use the trace wizard instead to nudge your area in an exact location. Normally, you don't need that kind of precision, but it's there if you need it. So let's hit escape that menu. At this point, we assume everything is ready for sewing. Again, everything here is green. We have our pattern here. We just traced a few times, so we have a good idea where it's going to sew. We have a speed that we want, and we have the colors that we want. So at this point, if your hoop is loaded, your fabric's loaded, all your thread is actually in the needles, and everything's all good. At this point, you press the green start button, and your machine will sew. And in a nutshell, that's most of the functions you're using on the control panel 90% of the time. So what I haven't shown is loading a design from the USB stick and loading a design from memory, so I'll cover that right now. We haven't sewed yet, we're just going to cancel. We need to go back to editing mode, so I'll press the button with just one needle and hit yes. It's flashing red. We can now change designs. Let's press the memory button, which is a picture of a flower and a bunch of folders. Here. At the top we see select design. That's what we do. And these are some of the designs which are in memory. You just move up and down to preview some of it. And whichever one you want to do, you select. So this one's dragon. We were just on snail. This one's our basic design tiger. And this is a simple R for someone. We can just hit enter. It's asking us if we want to scale or rotate or anything here. We just press enter again. And there's no preview yet. We're still in editing mode. We are going to perhaps change the color to color 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, which is orange. And let's enter dry mode. And here we go. Here's our design, one color only, in orange. And at this point, everything here is green, so you just trace your design, and press go whenever you're ready to sew. Now, let's talk about the colors. These colors, I mean, maybe you changed out your cones and you have a completely different colors. Notice I have red as 1 and orange as 7 and pink as 2. Maybe that's not what your order is. So let's go into editing mode. Back here. And let's jump into the parameter section real quick, which is a picture of a hand. And let's press the page up and page down buttons to move about. This is the same buttons as speed up and speed down. Here we go. On one of the pages it says set display thread colors at the bottom. Press enter. And here along the top are the complete colors for our machine. And this is merely a convenience. You don't really need to do this, but whenever you change the cones, maybe you want it to look presentable for the boss or for a customer or even for yourself as an aid so that you don't mix up the colors incorrectly. So you notice I have, this is needle 1 on the far left and needle 15 at the far right. Notice I have red, pink, white, blue, and whatnot. Well, maybe I want to change my first color to something else or change the second color. So let me just press enter here. You basically press enter over and over again and you notice these things jump about. The 5th color was black, the 6th color was some sort of green, and we just hop around all over the place until it's done, and then it brought us back to the main. Let's go back. And let's say we wanted to change the first color to like a real pale yellow. At this point red is now yellow, and let's just press enter to get the rest of it. And let us choose our new yellow, which is 1. There we go, the preview is yellow. Let's go out of editing mode so we can see it. And here we go. Our color is now, cone 1 is assumably yellow, and the preview is telling us that we probably did a good job in selecting color that we wanted to sew on. And let me go back and change it back to red because I don't want to be confused. Okay, and enter until we're done. Now, the colors displayed down here are programmable by a simple text file. And that can be emailed to you if you want to change the colors here. It's very simple if you look on the inside of it. And you put the text file in the USB stick and you place it in here, and then you go to the screen and it will ask you if it wants to update the colors. So, in case you don't like these colors, it is editable. Again, just email us and we can email you a color file to insert into there. And let's leave this menu. Okay, what else? Let's cover loading a design from a USB stick. It's really simple. Just make sure you're in editing mode. It probably works in both modes. But you have a USB port right about here, and let us insert the stick. Here we go. And if you look down here, there's a little indicator for the USB. It lights up when the USB stick is done initializing. So unlike a floppy disk, a USB usually needs a second or 2 seconds before it's okay. So let's take it out. And symbol's gone. Put it back. So that was a second, and USB stick is loaded. Now go to the USB menu. That is a picture of a floppy disk right here. And the first option says to read from a USB. We'll select that. And there are some files on here. And let's just load this file here. We'll press enter. It's telling us what location for our memory We don't really need that. Now it's asking us, do we want to compensate it for satin stitches? We don't need to, unless you're using a really flexible fabric. So anyhow, just hit no. Alright, so it's loaded. Do we want to load another one? Not really. So hit no. And let's leave. And there we go. I think it automatically loaded the file too. So let's go into drive mode to preview it. Press the button with the one needle going up and down. And yes. And there we go. That's the file we just loaded. And very conveniently it's there. Now if we want to make changes to it, let's go back to editing mode. And let's press the picture of the hand. We can change some design parameters anytime we want. Scale or rotation are the usual things. Most of the time people are going to use this menu for rotating the design. So if we want to rotate it, we pick direction, and I'll press up or down. And direction will choose the most common rotations and mirrorings that you would use. So generally if it's an F, that is normal, and an F that's upside down but not mirrored is what you would use for caps. And most of these others aren't really used that much, but just depending on where you're sewing on your fabric. Rotation angle is for really fine rotations, but you would like 0%, 1%, 2%, but generally you would either rotate it in your design software or just rotate the fabric if you want to do some sort of fine angle. And actually let's go to direction and enter, rotate it. Oh, and to leave menus, I'm pressing the picture of a door, and if you press that, it just goes back a menu all the way until you are back at the main site. Alright, let's see a preview by pressing the drive key. Yes. And there we go. Dallas is upside down, and it looks like it's mirrored also. I chose the wrong F. Notice here that the F you chose is here, and actually that's not an upside down F. That is upside down and mirrored. So let me fix that. Back to editing. Let's go back to the beginning. Okay, F. And that was the wrong one. And I'm pressing up and down. There we go. That is an upside down F. Okay, back. Let's hit drive mode. And here we are. And this pattern is ready to sew on the cap. And let's see, what else? About the only thing else you would use a lot would be the trim function. The trim function, which is a picture of a scissors. You press it and it says trim immediate. Let's press enter. And that cut the thread on the hoop. So if you were sewing and you stopped in the middle of the sew and you want to remove the hoop for any reason, you would use the trim command and cut the thread. That will cut not only the top thread but the bottom thread. Then you can remove the hoop. Trimming will happen automatically in every design at every color change. So you will only use the trim function for those cases where you've got to stop a design for whatever reason and make a cut right there. And what else? There are buttons here to manually change the needle. It is along the bottom row. You can't see that. But it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It was the same buttons we used to select colors in our automatic color change selecting menu. So if you were to press these colors and say you wanted to sew in manual mode, which is a manual color change mode, you would sew and then press a number down below. And notice here, this would automatically change to the color and the number of whatever needle you chose to go to. And it's instantaneous, so if you press these bottom numbers at any time when you're at this screen, it will automatically move the head there. And okay, let's not leave that there. Alright, and that about sums it up. That would be the most common things on the control panel. The only other things would be to turn on or off the machine, which are the blue and red buttons next to the start and stop buttons at the very bottom. And they say power on and power off. You just hold them down to start and stop the machine. And well, I think that does it for a introduction to the control panel on the single head machine. There are other videos showing this control panel in a little more depth and some of the configuration menus that can change the way it sews. So there's a lot more videos. Please watch them all. And if you have any questions or if you have a request for a video that's not already up there, by all means email us and we will put that in our list and try to get that ASAP. And that's it. Good luck with your sewing.